This time on Captain Chaos's laboratory, we're going to be working on the Lemax Village Collection, the Teacups, which is a ride. The person I got it from, they tried to work on it before. This was laying in the box. It's definitely broke off. It apparently spans the gap right here. So we'll have to fix that when we're done getting the unit to work. So I'm going to take this and set it out of the way so I don't lose it or break it. So it's been attempted to be worked on before, but they weren't able to successfully fix it. So let's see what's going on. So got a bad jerking motion, and that's not rotating. And it just locked up. So let's see about taking this thing apart and see what's going on. I noticed this one was loose and when I took it out of the box, so I knew that one comes off. Do they all come off that way? No. So this one, the reason it doesn't come off is there's splines here for a gear. So the gear must have fell off inside, so that's why this one doesn't spin. And we got some foam on the track right here. We're gonna get rid of that. All right, similar to the Kiddie Cruise and the like zombie airplane ride. Like the airplane ride, the zombie airplane ride has a very similar platform. Except that those have a center hub that lifts and lowers things. This ring would be like the center hub. So on the bottom, make sure nothing falls off. I'm just gonna put my fingers on the cups to protect them. We have a whole bunch of screws. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 screws to be exact. So I'm not going to take out the center 3. I'm going to take out the... It hurts. Okay, this character is broke free. This lady. Like I heard something move. And apparently this sign is also broke. Neat. Alright, so this is going to take some work. That's too big. I need a slightly smaller screwdriver. Anyhow, what I was about to say was I'm going to take out the outer screws first and leave the center 3 screws in. And I believe those 3 screws in the middle actually holds in the drive mechanism. So I want to try and keep the drive mechanism, at least for the moment, attached to the base. So I'm just going to do the outer screws. Now this is missing a screw right here, so I'm not gonna. I'm gonna skip that hole since there's nothing there. And when I put it back together, I'll see if I have a screw that's got the same thread or depth that I can put in there to actually make it kind of back to original. I should. I keep a lot of hobby screws, especially from the parts houses I get. So I should have a screw that will fill in that hole. Alright, we got 2 screws left. That's 1 and 2. Now I also have this tip at a slight angle so the bottom just doesn't flop off, so it's not straight up. Now let's see if this opens or if those center screws are important. Bunch of thin wires. Alright, so I'm gonna have to take those center screws out because this center hub is those center screws, and they are... This probably has a ring with a lip. So Let's push the edges back on. Still holding it, so as I loosen it, it doesn't hopefully fall apart. Just taking that one screw out, I can feel everything shift, so it looks like you have to remove them all. And this uses the standard Lemax 4.5 volt adapter. So in case you don't have this piece, you know what it runs on if you get one without a power supply. Now let's see if this will lift off. Here's that gear. And we have two circuit boards. We have a circuit board that's right under this flat spot here. And we have another main circuit board right there. I'm going to try and tip it a little bit so hopefully you can see. One circuit board, which looks like a distribution board for the lighting. This uses the fairy style light wires, which is super thin and really fragile. I have a funny feeling some of these are broke on this sign, so we're going to try it when we get it fixed. I'm going to look at it again. Here's our drive. Hey, there's that impossible gear. That's impossible to find, but you can get them now, so that's nice. So I'm going to set this over here. That way those wires that are all soldered on don't get bunched up. This is a... This motor was purchased and replaced by Suntronics. That's Happy Holiday Parts, the ones that now make the impossible gear. So it does have a new motor. Pulling this apart so I can check the gears to see if any of them are binding. That one looks okay. The most common cause is this guy and this guy. So the first gear and the last gear in the set is usually the one that breaks. And they all look good. So I'm wondering if it's a weak motor or a weak belt that's causing the problems. So or if we're just getting caught on the this gear over here, if it was getting caught in the moving mechanisms. Now I'm going to put this cap back on. The reason being is these two have the pins and the other two pins are stuck right there. So if I try and turn it on, the gears are just going to shoot out and go all over the place. So we need to set everything back into place. That. Now what I'm doing is I'm putting pressure on the gear trying to make it slip. Yeah, these lights aren't coming on at all. So, oh, sorry about the dog. This is going to take a little work to get it going. Trying to see why it might be slipping. going to remove this so I can get a better look at the belt. I'm trying to look sideways to see the belt. I see dust or powder from the belt, but I want to check the belt. And then we'll have to check the gear, the big planetary gear on the rotating mass, and see if any of these are bad. Now, the one screw that holds this on is right there. So you do have to take this top section off. Like that. This black specks is caused by the belt failing. This belt's nice and tight. And it's not leaving any marks on my fingers. It may have been replaced when the motor was replaced. I'm going to assume it was, since that belt's in really good shape. So, whatever the problem is, it's most likely caused by this upper part. Excuse me. All right. So, before I forget, let's screw this back down. Fixing the lighting on this is going to be the fun part. And when I mean fun, I mean hard. So, these little thin wires. Now, the bottom of this is surprising. All the little wires that go around, they're actually a heavier gauge wire than what Lemax is notorious for using for their pin lights that they use on their different stuff, like their Ferris wheels and carousels. So I'm surprised that this uses standard gauge wire and not the fairy wire, which is the thin strands that are about as thick as a human hair. So that's actually kind of surprising. Make sure everything's lined up, push it down, and now we're going to screw this one back together. Lubrication's good. It's not dry. It's not really discolored. Has a little bit of a tinge to it, but it's not bad yet. If you wanted to, at this point, you could re-lubricate it. White lithium grease or silicone grease. Make sure it's not super thick, because the white lithium grease I buy for like a car, as an example, is really thick, and it wouldn't work so well on here. But if you go get hobby grease, you should be fine. Hobby stores, Amazon, eBay, etc. There we go. What I was doing is it's sliding over these posts, those clicks, was it lining itself back up. Make sure it turns. Turns just fine. So, now let's take a look at the bottom and make sure none of these are broke. So, this big gear, this big ring gear is fully intact. And this inner ring gear is fully intact. The planetary gears, they're fully intact. But how are we going to get this guy back on? First things first, let's get at the seat in here. And is this going to go on easy or not? The answer is not. So, basically, there's splines on this shaft, and then you can see this side is indented and that side is flush. The indented side comes down, and the flush side goes up. I'm not sure why it came off. It's lubricated. It does not appear to be cracked. There's no cracks. And that's what holds on these pods. It's just the pressing of the gear. The problem is I can't get down to the center very well because these teacups are in my way. But I need to try and get this to press back on. And I need to put equal pressure on it. There we go. I think I got it. Hey, I did. Alrighty. Surprising. I wasn't sure it was going to make it or not with the with my finger not fitting. Alright, so 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to see if this can drive it without the outer ring. There we go. Make sure it's clear of everything and fire it up. So it is turning. The reason these aren't turning is this gear is what causes these to spin in a circle. So it uses an inner and an outer planetary gear setup, a planetary ring, or a planetary gear set, however you want to word it, to control the different layers. So one little motor transfers through the small gears to the big gear, which then transfers to the main center gear, which that in turn rotates the one ring, and then this ring being solid and this ring being solid, meaning they don't rotate, these are forced to spin within the two rings. But I can see the motor isn't weak. They're just rotating just fine. This gives me the most mass weight to test the motor strength. It doesn't give me the resistive friction or resistivity of the outer ring, but this at least tells me that you can see it how it fights, but it's still going. So now let's put the big ring in and do another test. I'm wondering if the only problem was that gear that came unpressed just got caught in the moving parts. Now, when I pressed it on, it pressed on. It shouldn't come back off ever again unless you pull it. It is flush. You got pins. They're flush all the way. And when I spun it with my fingers, I was also pulling it out, and it did not want to come out. So I think we're good on that one. That's going to have to get re-glued. I don't think I have it lined up correctly. Yeah, it's not. If you don't get those feet into those 3 holes that the screws go through, it doesn't line up the gear. All right. Yeah, she's still sticking. I don't know what she's sticking on. Alright, so that's where it's stopping. What I'm doing is I'm spinning these to see which one of these pods is causing me my problem. That one spins the freest. This one clicks. I'm wondering if I have a crack up top. Oh, this is the guy. I can hear it. I can hear it and feel it. So it's the green wheel. The green wheel is causing me the problems. First thing I'm going to do is try and pry the gear off carefully so we can get to the teacups. Problem is I can't see the inside gear that's below the cups, so I need to get this off. So there's the gear. Now I can lift this. We got some hard pieces of plastic inside the teeth. I'm wondering if that's causing the issue. It's either plastic casting or something's chipped. But I got a couple of teeth right here that have this hard plastic crap in it. One of the other houses I just worked on, that was the problem. Literally the only reason why the system didn't work is there's a broken piece of casting stuck inside the teeth of the gear due to the lubrication being so sticky. And that was stopping the entire front assembly of the house not to work. Just debris. These 3 planetary gears look good. I don't see any fractures. All the teeth are intact. They're not worn down. We got more of that hard plastic right here. Looks like snot. That's hard plastic. Yeah, here's more of it. I am not sure what it's from. I don't know if it's from the teacup spinning and it's wearing out the holes that they passed through, or if something got in here. Yeah. Oh, maybe it's the old lubrication before it was repaired the last time and it got full of dirt and dust and it solidified. That's possible too. Because there's a whole bunch of little specks all the way around. There we go. All right. Push it back in. Remember, if you take this off, the dished side goes down. And when you push it on, try and give it equal pressure. Make sure that your planetary gears drop into place so that this protrudes through. It hasn't dropped yet. The teeth aren't lined up. There we go. And now, I'm going to press this on. Equal pressure. Meaning don't push with one finger so it cocks at an angle, because that's how you break a gear. Oh, that's way smoother. Still makes a little noise, but I'm not sure what that is. Just double check. Oh, this one's got the same hard plastic. Yeah, the brown thing that kind of looks like a booger is old grease, but the white thing on top is a piece of hard material like plastic. I'm wondering if when they worked on this, maybe something chipped or broke and it didn't get cleaned out. Like I said, this was worked on once before I got it. I've come across many animated house that has failed because a piece of casting has broke off and got stuck in the mechanism. They use so much grease that grease acts like glue and collects dirt, dust, debris. So we're just gonna, that's just grease. We're just gonna clean it out and try it again. It's a piece of foam. And we have another piece of foam right here. Foam BBs from the case that this sits in. Okay, let's give it a whirl. This is the hardest part because you can't see those alignment studs. And not only do you have to line up the outer gears for this, you have to line up the inner gear to the inner ring and get it in those 3 feet so it's in perfect alignment for that gear. Yeah, she's still off. So close. So if you have this piece, you're going to have to be patient. I was lucky the last time to get it on like the first or second try. Of course, this time it's going to take me 3 hours just to get the thing to line back up on its studs so I can test it. So I still got to keep it apart so I can try and work on the lighting that doesn't work. But I want to make sure that this thing, the motion part's solved. There we go. Alright, let's see. Nope, I'm wrong. It felt like it did, but it just pulled itself completely off the track. Now let's see if I can hold it, if it'll stay centered enough to at least try. No, the gear's not even touching. So. Seriously. This might take me some time apparently to get this back into its track. Yes, let's rotate it. 120 degrees to the next set of pins and see if maybe they just don't line up because they're slightly different spacings. Alright, one more rotation. I don't think it's in. No, it's not in. Wait. Start. Alright, well, I'm going to have to study all these gears a little closer and figure out what is catching. Wish I could see inside to see where it's catching. So, I'm going to take all three of these teacups off and I'm going to check each gear closely for play, and I'm going to check to see, I guess I'll use a magnifying glass and I'll check to see if there's any that have a crack that I can't see with my eyes. Center ring spins totally free. The center ring doesn't spin, it spins around the ring, but if there was anything causing it to get stuck on this middle ring, I should be able to feel it. Is that what it's getting caught on? I think I figured it out. So, this sits in here. I'm going to hold just the center stud so I can spin these. Doesn't turn. Gets stuck. These planetary gears right here, which is probably why they have this bluish green stuff, is scraping this inner lip. So if I hold the outer ring, they spin freely. But if I hold the inner ring, which allows the weight of the teacups to push this outer ring down, they catch. So you can see how now this is proud. Now granted, this won't sit this far low. It sits like this where it's not quite level with this inner ring here, right there. So what's happening is a couple of these gears, the ones that are really dirty, are too low, and that explains this blue paint. It's scraping on the edges. So I'm going to take this all apart and I'm going to press these gears on further so that they don't touch. So I'm going to take all 3 pods off and then press all 9 gears on. It's just really greasy. So while I do that, I'm going to pause. You saw how I did it, where you pop the big gear off using a spudger, or you can even use a blade screwdriver. Then I'm going to reseat individual cups. I'm going to put them back in, and I'm going to manually spin them to see if they still catch. Then I'll set it in there, try it again. If it works, I'll film it and show you. If it doesn't work, I'm going to get back to figuring out why it's not working, because it's driving me nuts. And then once that's done, I'll figure out this broken sign and what it would take to get these lights to flash again. And then the broken light, to get that light on again. And then get the sign glued on if I can get it all fixed up. And of course we'll put this lady, we'll glue her back to the back. I think these characters are all good. Yeah, just her. So now for figures like this, I hear all the time, what do you use for glue? I use Gorilla, blue cap or yellow cap with the brush. That's how I'll re-adhere the lady in green back to her cup. So And if you don't have this piece and you're curious, the whole unit is relatively, it's just plastic. This feels like a resin cap, and then these, they're porcelain. So if you have this piece, be careful when you're pushing, especially if you have to reset these planetary gears, that when you push, you do evenly so you don't snap the sides off, because again, they're porcelain and they're thin. So anyhow, I'm going to stop here for a second. I'm going to tear this apart, press all 9 gears on, and then do some more testing to see if it's going to catch this inner lip and scrape the paint, and then try it out again. So I'll be back in just a moment. Alright, I'm back. I think I got this taken care of. As you can see, it's spinning beautifully now. The gears that are pressed onto the bottom of the cups, I could not get to move. So I took a closer look at everything that's going on in here, and I put shims. There's one shim on each center stud to lift this plate off of the rotating disc. So that stops it from rubbing. Let me find a pointy thing. So this platform isn't quite level, and if you look right here, you'll see this white line. That's where these discs, the big disc that spins, is rubbing the plastic. And then the blue disc has been rubbing the plastic on the inner track. The pink one has been rubbing the disc on the inner track, and the green one has not. So based on the wear patterns of this white arc that's on this inside edge, and the wear patterns on this track that these are attached to that are spinning, I realize it probably isn't sitting too low. So I took a very thin metal washer and stuck it on the center stud. That gear that I popped off using the spudger, I put the washer on the top, so it lifts these plates up a very, very small amount. But it's enough that it clears this inner lip right here and stops them from tipping at an angle, cutting into the plastic around the edges. So it's, and I don't know if it originally had spacers. It may have, it may not have, because again, I'd never taken one apart up till today, and also I didn't take it apart the first time. So it's possible it had some plastic spacers, nylon spacers, metal spacers that elevated the teacup rotating parts so they don't rub this or this, the outer track. So the next thing to deal with is the lighted sign. I have no idea what this sign is supposed to look like. If it's supposed to flash, down solid, rotate. I do know, based on what I can see, I have a broken wire here and a broken wire here, and I have no clue what this is supposed to look like. So I might have to go online and take a look at the video. But these fine little wires, they're all soldered across. I'm not sure where the broken wires are for. Oh, I bet you the broken wires are for this end right here, because there's nothing attached to them. So they probably went like that, and they were soldered at one point to these pads. It's hard to tell. I'm looking at the solder with some magnifiers, and I'm looking at these broken wires. And this broken wire does have some solder residue on it. This broken wire does not. It's just copper. There's no silver, which would be the solder. I'm trying to see if there's any other wires in this loom that are potentially broken. But I assume that this short wire is probably soldered to one of these tracks right here, and the second one was in these tracks, because I'm looking. It has 3, 3, 3, and they're in clusters. So 3 LEDs, 3. Oh, that's weird. There's not 3 LEDs. Even though there's 3 pads, there's only 2 LEDs per cluster. So I wonder if the lights chase back and forth. But the lights aren't working at all. These two, even if these two paths were separated, these aren't turning on. So, might have something either shorted or broke within the stem or in the base. So we're going to check that and see what's going on. But as you saw, it started right back up without any issues. I'm going to clean out the glue that's in here when they tried to reglue this back together. Let's see. It's hard glue. It does chip out, so that'll be cleanable. That will allow, if I can get these lights to work, that I can sandwich this back together and make it seal correctly. Because it has indentations right there and right there for that pin and that pin, which are still intact. So you might be able to actually restore this almost to original look. Let's see, will they still clip together? That one clips, and this one will clip better once I get the glue out of the seam. But we can put this back together and then put a very small dab maybe on the inside so it's less noticeable to keep this from separating in case that was the problem. But I think the excess amount of glue on the inside, since it's not coming apart, caused this to be separate and this to stay open. Then we can use a better quality glue than what's stuck on here to reattach it there and reattach it here. And then we'll use a better quality glue to reattach the sign. Also, these teacups in the center, when you take them out and put them in, they only go in and out one way. The spacing between the pins is not equal. So if you rotate it 120 degrees or one section over, it will not drop in. So if you don't remember which way you did it, you can either take this back off and do it and then mark which leg is which pin, or you can just, okay, it didn't fit, rotate it 120, doesn't fit, rotate it 120, and it should drop in. Now, at the same token, you're not just lining up those 3 pins, you're lining up the gears on all 3. So you have 6 different things that have to fall into place for this to set back into the center. So don't give up on it. It is frustrating, as you saw just a few minutes ago. I had a problem doing it, and it is what it is. Here's that plate. Now you won't be able to see it, but basically if you look down in here, you'll see there's a space now between this plate and that stationary gear. I just put the spacer on top. You can see it's a very small spacer. I did it with all 3 clusters, and now it's not rubbing. I had it running for several minutes before I started the video just to test it, because my indication that there was a problem is this huge wear groove that goes around. I also was pressing on this to see if I could maybe take some of the warp out that's causing it to tip. I think if you adjust the tension of the screws, it should level out. So one screw might be really tight and one screw might just be snug, because this is starting to deform a little. It's thick enough plastic it shouldn't, but it is not perfectly flat. Also, if you have a ride like this, apparently you want to try and keep it on the flattest surface possible, or the most level surface possible, because it is prone to rubbing, because the teacups float. So now comes the fun part. Now we got to figure out the wiring. See if we can get the lights to work. So, as I was mentioning earlier, this uses fairy light wire. That's generally what it's called. It's this thin wire that has no insulation, but it is coated in a varnish to insulate it from itself, because this would just be one bundle of solid wire if it didn't have a varnish coating. So you got to be careful with it, because if you scrape it, you can scrape off the coating, and then you have the wires touching each other, which can create a short. So in this bundle, it wraps here, it goes all the way up to this, and then we have this light here. On this side, the light that's dangling is this one, and it's not bundled to anything except for the light. I'm going to assume that the wire is broke, and that's why the light doesn't work. And I think part of it is because it's on the wrong side of the clip. Let's see if I can get the wire on the inside of the clip. I need some tweezers. It doesn't appear to be broken, but it is on the wrong side. These little tabs are the clips that help seat it in between the LEDs down here. And it's a rub point, and it's also a point where it can cut the wire. There we go. Now the wire is on the right side of the clip. Still looks to be intact. We still have no light. So this wire goes right here. And I'm sure these wires are the same. Nope, these wires are over here, but they go to the same spot on the board. So somewhere between here and here, this wire has no continuity. It has either been broken or shorted to itself. Now, when it comes to this small, fine stuff, I always recommend magnifiers. It makes life easier, so you don't have to hold a magnifying glass with one hand, so you have both hands free. And I'm just going to examine the wire. Yep, the wire's got a break. See how it's flickering? So we're going to have to fix it. The break is right inside the plastic. It's a really bad spot for it, not going to lie. So we'll deal with that. Now that I know where the break is on that, why are these lights up here not functional? So it's either one of two things. Either this wire and this wire that are separated is the continuity for the whole thing, or somewhere in this bundle that goes all the way wrap around to this little circuit board here, the distribution board, something has failed, whether it be component or power signal. I'm assuming the lights flash in a sequence or a pattern of some sort, because if these all just turned on, you'd only need two wires, a hot and a negative. But we have a bundle. Again, I don't know, because I have not personally seen this ride in a functioning capacity. So I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to reattach these wires from what I can tell. So if I put this back as where the sign would be, like so, this wire would solder here, and this wire would solder here. So there's a middle pad in each, which has a different type of solder connection. There's no pin sticking through. And if I look at all the other pads, the middle of those three pads has the copper wire soldered to them. So I'm going to turn on my soldering iron so it gets warm. I'm going to move this so I can try and zoom in and show you what I'm looking at, because of course I'm doing it down here. The camera's way up top. You can't see it. So you're like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. So, focus. Gotta love it when it doesn't focus. It's trying. It's not trying good enough though. Problem is there's just too many layers. It's up here, but it also sees down low, and you can see the wires are in focus, but the thing isn't. So I'm going to try and cheat the system by using something to distract its focus. There we go. Now it doesn't see too far. So on this end, which is not the end I'm going to solder, I have a pad, and a pad. And you see the pad here, and the pad here has a pin, which is the back of the LED. The pad in the middle has the copper wire, but there's no pin. So I'm assuming the pads down there are the same way, because every middle of 3 has a copper wire. So I'm going to solder the 2 broken wires, which I can't really show you because if I move it, it's going to lose focus, in. And then we're going to see if the lights turn on. If the lights don't turn on, then we need to check the power. See if we have a power problem or a broken power wire. So my soldering iron is up to temperature, so let's get this fixed. First I'm going to do is I'm going to tin the tips, which will do 2 things. It'll allow me to solder it easier, and it'll burn off any of the varnish that they use to protect it at the tip. And then I'm going to add a little solder to the solder pads, so I have some fresh solder to do the repair. There we go. And because this wire is not insulated with vinyl or rubber insulation, I'm going to use some tweezers to hopefully hold this in place. Might have to also, there we go. I'll just push the circuit board up to the wire, since the wire is not being This is definitely work I'd recommend that you have magnifiers for, because it is really hard to see with your eyes. Unless you have like really good vision. Alright, so those wires are now reattached. I'm going to move that out of my way. And we still don't have any lights. So I'm just going to double check the cluster, make sure I have no other broken wires running down this whole thing. Okay. Sorry about how noisy that is. It's the speaker. It's picking up some of the noise from the mechanism. It doesn't have a really good smoothing capacitor on there like the newer ones do. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just see if I get power that's actually coming up to the top. I'm going to use my voltmeter and check these pads, because I'm wondering if I'm just not getting power. Still using the magnifier so I can actually see the pads. Looks like I'm getting 3 volts. .5. So I'm getting juice. Well, that's interesting. This is the joys of finding what's wrong with these. Do is I know that it's putting out 2.5 volts to the lights, so I am going to just try and turn on one LED at 2 volts. They're yellow LEDs. Normally yellow LEDs run between 1.8 and 2.2. So I'm going to split the difference. If I can don't need that. I'm not getting any light. So I'm going to bump it up to 2.5 like it was from the system. I'm just making sure I got good continuity by shorting the leads out. So yes, the lights work. If I touch these, I get 2 clusters of lights. So I'm wondering if I have a ground problem, because I noticed all these wires are hot. Meaning they're all only hooked to the hot track. There's nothing hooked to the ground track. Maybe there's another wire that's broken here that's supposed to be the ground. Because of course if you don't have a hot and a negative, you do not have lights. So I'm going to turn it back on. Yeah, so this is why you have to have patience if you work on your own at your house. Is sometimes they're fickle and you need to find the reasons. Multimeters help. Recommend. You don't have to get an expensive one by any shape of the imagination, but they do assist a lot. I'm going to desolder this wire here and use it as a test. What I want to do is I want to test this wire to see the power that's actually coming out of it in relationship to the other wires, because I do not have a ground and that's concerning me. Sorry, the noise was getting on my nerves. The hum of the motor is much more soothing than the static on the speaker. Aha! There's another broken wire in here. Found it. Boy, these magnifiers come in handy. That's why these lights aren't working. There's 3 broken wires. Now, let's verify that the other broken wire is my missing connection. So I gotta move this so I can see it better. So my hands aren't blocking it. Reset it because I hit a hold button. There we go. Alright, so let me solder this one back on. Like that. I'm going to turn this off while I take this wire out of the loom so I don't arc it. It's low voltage, but the circuitry on this is old, and I prefer not to damage it. So we're going to kill all the power. And now I'm going to try and unravel this guy, get it out of this loom so I can connect it back to the board with all these lights. There we go. Wow. That is... And I bet you it went on this first pad on the bottom track, because this first pad, the solder, using the magnifiers, is not the same as the rest. The other ones are nice even balls, and then this one's a little bit higher with a, looks like a hole, which would be where the wire was connected probably. So, same thing. I'm going to put a little fresh solder on there so it sticks, and I'm going to solder the wire, which will do one of 2 things, or 2 things. It'll burn off some of the coating and allow for a better adhesion with the tinning. And now comes the fun part again with these fidgety little wires, where I'm going to try and solder this thing into the PCB here. Let it harden. There we go. I got light. Awesome. All right, let's turn off the machine. I will turn it here in just a second so you can see it. Let me clean some of this stuff off for some room. Oh, what a pain. So I'm going to set this down. And I'm going to turn off some lights because they're not super bright. The Carnival lights usually are at night, so they're not the brightest. So I'm going to turn off the light by the camera. I'm going to turn off the main lights to the room. Go. Lights everywhere. Yeah, might as well turn off the last set just so it's easier to see. Look at that. Beautiful. So, lights are coming back. Turning that off. So, Alrighty, lift her up. So it might be hard to see in the camera, but this guy right here, I'm gonna get my fat fingers out of the way. This guy right here has a red coating on it. That red coating is the positive. Then all these copper wires that have no clear coating are the negatives. So the negatives, I guess showing you, are soldered to every middle cluster. So we got 2, 1 in the middle, 2, 1 in the middle, 2, 1 in the middle. And then this red wire is the long track on the bottom edge, which is your positive. So it's a negative switch chasing light assembly on that little circuit board. So we got those lights working. Now comes the fun part. Squeezing it back together and putting it in here. Because there's always a chance that if you squeeze it back together and you chafe those wires, they'll short out. It's one of the reasons I don't like them. I understand their purpose, but they're not designed to be moved once they're installed. And I'm not the first. Those have been moved. I'm the second or third, whoever, doing this. My job is to try and make it right. So I'm going to spend some time cleaning the track and then squishing it all back together. That way, we'll see if it works. If it works, I'll probably set this, glue it on, and then deal with this guy. That has a broken wire right where it goes through the base, down yar. The broken wire is not where it's broke up top. It's broke down here at the very bottom. I'm going to see if I can salvage it and get that light working. And then maybe this will be a fully functional teacup ride. So I shall be back. I'm sure you all know how to scrape glue. You can use a spudger or a screwdriver or a knife. And that way you don't watch me for 15 minutes while I'm doing this. So also this video is probably pushing, I don't know, an hour and a half. So I shall return in a moment. Okay, it's back together. Try to position it so you can see it better. You can see the sign. So it works. I reconnected the wires on the light. It flickers a little, I'm not sure why. This one flickers every once in a while, but this one flickers more. But the wires are all reconnected. It works. I might have to take that light bulb back out and check the solder. I also replaced the screw on the bottom. Yeah, I'm going to have to take it back apart. See if I can get that flickering to stop. So, well, other than that, it works. So I'll work on that. But I wanted you to see, it doesn't like to be tipped, but you can see the signs working. I super glued, not hot glued, the sign back on, and I put a dab of super glue on each end of this sign, as well as, of course, where it had cracked over here. I did not super glue the center. I just put a drop on each end to hold them shut, so it keeps tension on this pole, which disconnected. And then I put a drop over here on this one where it had snapped. To fix the spinning wheels, I used a very thin washer. It's probably the thickness of the line on a ruler. Maybe twice as thick. It's super thin. It's a thin metal shim or a washer, but it came in a shim washer kit, and that lifts the cups just enough to clear the thickness of the gap where the seam is. And now they're not rubbing this edge anymore, so technically the owner could clean this grease off and then repaint it if they wanted to. It doesn't matter, I guess. It works. If you go to a carnival and actually look at a carnival, unless the ride is brand new, there's wear on them anyway. And the ticket booth lights up, the teacup lights up, the illumination for inside lights up. I just got to take it back apart and work on this light to find out why it flickers because you can see the difference it makes. So, but basically, the break was at the base. I put it back together, but there might be a break higher up, and these lights are a pain. So if you have one that's broke, sometimes it's easier to replace the entire pole, than it is to fix the wiring. I'm going to try not to do that since these are painted. I'm going to turn the light back on. So, and you know the sound works. So, we're good. I also super glued her back in. Right there. So she's not flopping around making noise. So this was the teacups from Lemax. And there she be. That way it's not under stress with the motion. All the new... Oh, never mind. I guess the glue hadn't hardened yet. I'll let it sit for a couple of minutes, but it probably wasn't long enough. So I'm going to re-glue that too. Maybe they just don't make super glue like they used to. No, it's still wet. Never mind. So I'm going to re-glue this. I'm going to let it harden. I'm going to open it back up, fix that light. So as far as this goes, if you have this piece and it is maybe catching on the center disc, or it's grinding the outer edge where it's cutting into it, you can... I need something to prop that so it stays. You can take it apart, careful of the thin ferry wires, and then... Excuse me 1 second. There we go. That way it holds it straight. I need something to hold the tension so it doesn't flop off. You can take it apart, put little thin shims. I tried nylon shims. I didn't have any nylon shims. I had a center hole big enough to go over the nylon base that's on here. So I went with metal. And what I did is I just stuck it on to the lubrication, squeezed it so it was lubricated on both sides of the metal. And then reassembled, and voila. The catching, stopping, braking motion has been repaired. The transmission or gearbox is fine. None of the gears are broke. We're good. The belt, nice and tight and pliable. It's not stretched or vulcanized, so the belt's good. The motor was provided by Suntronics, or Happy Holiday Parts is their website. I'll link it below. It's a standard 300 CA motor. You can get them on Amazon as well. I'll link that too. And the belt kits. I get belt kits from Amazon, eBay, and Skull Crane. Skull Crane belts are slightly thicker than the ones I get on Amazon, so I'm really starting to like them, but they're also more expensive. And they're multi-kits. As you can see, it says 15 belts, and it gives you the measurements right there. So you can try and measure your belt to see if the kit will have your belt. Didn't need a belt, though, but just for future reference. Lastly, the sign light, as you saw, it's fidgety. You got to work with it if your sign light fails. Those are super thin wires. They're a little bit thicker than human hair, and they have a very thin, clear varnish, or yeah, it's a varnish coating or shellac coating on all the wires. And then one, at least on this one, they may vary, was a slightly different color, which was the positive wire, hence it had the red varnish, and that was on the bottom track. Without the magnifying goggles, I wouldn't have been able to see the solder. Oops. They fell off their hook. I wouldn't have been able to see the solder joint that wire was connected to. So you don't have to use magnifying goggles. If you have a set of helping hands, most helping hands come with a magnifying glass. You can buy them, you can use readers, whatever works for you so you can see better. Lastly is this. The wire was pinched, and of course the pole broke. The pole is fine. I fixed the pinch, which is at the very bottom, but I think there's another break, or because of the varnish, the solder didn't hold. So I'm going to take it back apart and fix that, or try to fix it so that way the light works and doesn't flash or flicker. And then lastly, I used the glue and glued in the girl in green right there back into her cup. If it's a part that doesn't need to come back apart, I use Gorilla Glue, like the sign or the light bar or the lady in the cup. those aren't designed to really come out and be used for anything. They're just there. I didn't let it sit long enough. I usually try to let the heavier things, like this sign back here that just fell off again, is actually pretty stout, and I only had the glue set for like 3 or 4 minutes, and it's still tacky, so it's not long enough, because it's not a small dab of glue, it's a large dab of glue. I don't have any activator to make it solid fast, which is fine. I'll let it harden over time. So once that's hard, I'll probably do it tomorrow. I'll take this back apart to fix this lamp. But that is how you take this apart. You do have to take all the screws out of the outside and the 3 screws out of the middle. Lift out your teacups, and then you can lift the base and move it. Twist it off to the side so you don't tear any of the wires that are sitting underneath the ticket booth. You got 2 circuit boards. Distribution board is right about here, and the main circuit board is down below attached to the base. You saw the motor, the gearbox assembly. It's held on with a couple of screws, very easy to get to once you get the top off. This is very brittle, probably because of its age, so be careful of the poles and the sign. So when you set it down, I was setting it on its face because the front of the ticket booth, I can't move it now because, let me see if I can move the camera a little. There we go. The front of the ticket booth is flat, and it holds this entire ring standing straight up on its end. Sorry, the camera doesn't move well this way. It moves well this way, the way it's mounted to the ceiling. And then also, because these handrails were broken when I got it, they weren't attached, I put a dab of glue on each handrail to hold it back to the circular rail so that this has some strength again. So there's no risk of snapping these off in motion, moving it, putting it in or out of its packaging or display. So, very interesting piece. I remember riding the teacups when I was a kid at the carnivals. They're kind of fun. Make them go really, really fast or slow, whatever. You know, however how fast you hold that center. So it's kind of interesting to see it recreated by Lemax. It's not a bad piece. The lighting is pretty decent. I actually do like the chasing LED lights. It's very reminiscent of the 80s. When chasing lights was very popular, and it was made super popular by a TV show called Knight Rider, where it was the front on the Trans Am. So the chasing lights is very reminiscent of old school technology, and they used an old school circuit board in there to do it. So it just doesn't use relays, it uses a digital processor, a chip. But other than that, it's a good piece. It's interesting, not Halloween, so of course I don't own it. But this is relatively fixed. I'm going to let this harden, and then tomorrow I'm going to take this apart, fix this light again, double check it, and then send it back to its owner. She'll be really happy because she wants to display it for Christmas this year. Halloween is about a week and a half away when I film this. Probably be November when this is up on the YouTube channel. So she should have this long before Christmas season for her display. So thank you for watching. Sorry that's so long, but this shows you how in-depth these get, and you didn't even see the hour that I didn't film where I was tracing stuff and holding things for it to glue. But if you have a broken piece, take your time, set time aside so you can do it, and you don't have to finish all at once. You can do it over the course of hours or days. A lot of these that I repair, when I fix them, I don't have parts. I have to pause the video, and sometimes it's 6 months between the first half when I took it apart and the second half when I reassemble it. It's kind of ridiculous, but unfortunately that's the way it works. There's another one I'll be doing next where there's a 9-day delay because I finally got the part in. So it just varies on what you need, what you do. If you have any questions on location of parts, where to find them, what might work, so on and so forth, you can always email me. I'll do my best to help you. Sometimes a little delayed in responding to emails, like right now during October, I'm getting tons of them a day and messages online. So yeah, I try to respond within a day, sometimes 2. So if you send me an email or a message, I will get back to you. Just don't get mad if I don't get back to you in a couple of minutes. But anyway, thank you for watching. Hopefully this helps you if you have the teacup or similar ride. Because remember, Lemax is good at reusing the same base with a different top. So the Zombie Airplane ride and the Octo Squeeze are almost identical, except one's got an airplane with a runway, and the other one has an octopus with the tentacles moving up and down above water. So So you may not have this specific one, you might have something similar, but at least you have the idea how to open it, what to look for, how to fix it. Take your time, especially if it has those thin fairy wires. So, all right, thanks again for watching. Until the next repair, have a good one.